I have a question for people. When you hear the word improv, does that scare anybody? Yes. Yeah. We were just talking about it. Anybody else? Anybody else have like because like public speaking is like one of the #1 fears, and improv is kind of like public speaking to another level.
Yeah. Public speaking plus you did not prepare.
Yeah, plus you didn't prepare. A lot of people's worst nightmare. Well, I've been doing it for about 4 years. You've been doing it for how long?
A year and a half, 2.
Yeah. And I remember when I first got started, it's something I always wanted to do, and when I first got started, I was a little nervous about it, but then as soon as I got, like after the first day, I was like, oh wow. And as long as I just take a breath, it's all good, so.
I'm just going to have to use the little arrow here to move around.
That's how we rehearsed it.
Oh no, we're going to have to improvise. Hi guys, so I guess we'll kind of vaguely get started now. Yeah, actually, my name's Ian Carroll, or actually, let's just start from the beginning here on the slide. So, yeah, we're going to do Impro-Style Improv techniques for Agile team programming. And that's because both of us go to a particular improv theater that's called Impro Theater. And team programming, I mean mob programming and pair programming, any sort of situation where you have a team of people who have to collaborate in order to make something happen. The tagline here is actually from a theoretician. Her name is Anne Bogart, right? Am I right about that? Did I get that right?
I don't know.
Viewpoints. Anne Bogart, right?
I don't think that's the right.
What? I'm losing my mind.
Doesn't matter, this is important.
Yeah, how you do anything is how you do everything is a quote.
Doesn't matter who said it, but someone said
it's probably from someone named Anne Bogart, but maybe not.
I think you're right. I'm just questioning it.
In any case, thank you. That was exactly what I needed in that moment, Doug. I really needed to be questioned right then. So yeah, how you do anything is how you do anything. How you do it, yeah. Any case, in Agile, like a lot of times what we'd like to do is to take the principles and sort of recursively do them to every single thing that we do. And we find that the more that we do Agile on absolutely everything, the better it works. When we have mixed paradigms, like there's a bit of waterfall in our Agile, or some sort of ad hoc thing that we're sort of just used to, or just sort of the way things are supposed to be, or the way things have always been, that usually tends to get in the way. So this idea right here is sort of where I came up with the idea of trying to get some of the improv chocolate into the Agile peanut butter. And
Actually get a nice little Reese's.
Yeah, delicious. So another thing that's to note is that no legacy code that we worked on is over 100 years old. However, the human genome is another matter. Last software updates there for about 100,000 years ago. So that's some real legacy code. And ultimately, we're programming these things that are fairly new. But we ourselves are operating on a system that is far older than that. And we need to understand how that system works in order to actually work as a team. So we need to be deliberate about this. A lot of times in software, I hear people talk about things like, oh, well, those are soft skills. As if, we can just ignore them. We really should not just ignore those. Also, a lot of times I will hear when I'm pair programming or mob programming, I'll hear someone say, oh, well, we were just a bad pair. As if that's an acceptable thing to say. We're professionals. How can we say, oh yeah, well, we just can't work together to produce this thing for you, so we're just going to work separately and less efficiently. Okay. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't consider that acceptable. And we're software engineers, or at least a lot of us are software technology professionals, so we should be able to figure this out. We figure lots of other things out. This should be no different. We should not be afraid to go into this. I don't mean genetic engineering, by the way. Just in case that was a question, that's fine. My name's Ian Carroll. For tech stuff, I'm a software crafter at 8th Light. I'm a graduate from the apprenticeship program, self-taught using a Scrum of One. So I developed a Scrum of One, scrummed myself into becoming a scrumming software engineer. These are my blogs and YouTube videos and stuff like that. If you want to take a picture of that, I know it's an obnoxiously long URL. That's YouTube's issue. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I just don't have the time.
What's the name of the channel?
What?
What's the name of the channel?
It's called FTL Talks. Faster than a lightning talk. They're, most of the talks are less than a minute long. So
Pretty sure
yeah.
it's the first one that comes up if you Google YouTube FTL Talks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I had no idea. Improv, I go to improv theater and I've improvised full-length plays in the styles of certain genres. So for me, Jane Austen, Tennessee Williams, Wes Anderson, I direct and improvise Star Trek, and I'm working on Stephen King right now, an improvised Stephen King. So it's an hour-long play in any of these styles. And we just make it up on the spot. Besides that, theater, Towson University, Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and I studied Taoist philosophy for about 10 years. That's kind of an interesting thing. This is Douglas Charles. Hello. Doug is, for tech, he does Stream Team for The Portal, which is an improvised streaming TV show in the style of The Twilight Zone. He does a number of things there. Improvised camera ops for Up Late with Adam Fisher, which is an improvised late-night talk show. And also just improvised lights and sounds for lots of things, but some of his favorites, Hemingway Untold, Shakespeare improvised.
Yeah.
Yeah. Besides that, LA Theater Sports, horror, scary children's stories. Come On In, which is a show.
It's a duo show with me and one of my improv partners, Corey. We pretend to be our older selves telling the fictionalized versions of how we got to our older selves. So we get a suggestion of something and then we just improvise like something we tell our grandkids.
Yeah. Also, Tennessee Williams, you do an improvised pirate show.
Yeah, I created and directed Sea of Suggestions, which is improvised pirates. If you guys watch Black Sails or have read Treasure Island, it's in the style of that.
Yeah. He's in the conservatory program at Impro. Also, an excellent swimmer.
This is true.
So let's talk about improv that we are talking about. We're not talking about improv that maybe you might be thinking about, or maybe you are, but a lot of times when we think about improv, we think about funny bits. We think about Saturday Night Live. We think about that kind of thing. Impro-style improv is a little different. There's a few things that are kind of thematic about it. For one thing, we do instant full-length stories over a well-revised script. We'll have relationships and connections over funny bits or situations or plot. We start with positivity over starting with conflict. And you can get away with starting with conflicts if you're doing a 2-minute scene, but if you're going to do an hour-long show, that's going to get real tedious. Also, nobody cares about your conflict that you just made up on stage. Responding to your partner's offer over offering a prepared idea is another one. Physicality over clever words as well. It's really important that we come on with some sort of body, remembering like.
Yeah, that goes in line with a big thing. If anyone is a writer in here, along with show don't tell, that's a big thing with that.
Yeah. So.
What do you mean by that?
So in writing, there's a thing where you can tell the reader something, or you can show them through someone's actions what kind of a character they are.
So, for example, my name is Ian, and I am in love with Douglas Charles.
It's not believable.
Hi, Doug. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Did you like your coffee or something? Never mind. I'm sorry. I just gotta go. So, there's the difference. Show, don't tell. So, physicality. No difference between technologists and performers is another major innovation that we do. So Doug, for example, is a technical improviser as well as a performer on stage. And he'll improvise the light board and the sound board as well. So
yeah, none of it is planned out. I have to do it all while they're improvising their dialogue, their scenes. I have to figure out what the setting is, what music goes with it, all in that moment.
And nobody can communicate with each other while this is going on.
Yeah.
This is all happening in real time. There's no time to be like, hey, Doug, we really need it to be this kind of a scene.
Yeah.
No time for that.
There's no time for that. We have to trust each other.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
So occasionally a gunshot goes off and the main character gets shot in the head halfway through the
That
show.
happened recently in the pirate show.
Yeah.
Aren't the technologists often in a very different part of the stage?
So in our theater, there's there's the stage. So for instance, this would be the stage. The tech performer would be over in like the corner over there.
Ken.
Yeah.
Okay, he's about where Ken is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not too far.
No. Our theater's cozy.
Yeah. This is actually larger than our theater.
Not like in the back with the big spot.
No, but the main company does do shows in bigger theaters where the tech performer will have to be all the way back there, and it is the same kind of deal where they have to just trust it.
It's something very unique to our theater. And one of the things that I find really interesting is the idea of how you do anything is how you do anything. That, it doesn't matter whether you're a performer or someone who is supporting the performers as a technologist, you're all actually still improvisers. So that's kind of a neat thing about Impro-Style, but you might notice that there's a lot of similarities here between this and the Agile Manifesto. So, for those of you who don't know, here it is. So yeah, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and this one, especially for improv, responding to change over following a plan. We don't like plans, we don't actually have them, we sort of get it off of each other right on the spot. Yeah. So you'll notice that these values kind of line up with each other in sort of a, not exactly completely together, but they get along with each other. And so there's some tools that can be used in one that could translate to the other. And vice versa, but this is mostly a talk for technology people rather than improv people, so we're going to focus on that direction. Team programming, just in case you didn't know, it's an XP practice. It gives you instant code review, so it allows for a better quality of code that way. Context and knowledge sharing, so everybody gets to learn a little bit of each other's work. That also means that if the database guy needs to take a vacation, or get sick one day, that your operation isn't sunk because he's been pair programming with everybody else, and everybody else knows enough about the database to keep moving. Group code ownership is another thing that's really big on that. You don't have information silos where like one person is owning everything. Again, allowing your database analyst to take a break every once in a while. And higher quality code in general is what you get from that, because many eyes can create better solutions to your code. So team programming means pair programming or mob programming. Pair programming being 2 people, mob programming more than 2. Hunter has a really, really good system for that, so if you guys want to learn more, there is, I think, an XP, or no, there's a mob programming RPG that you can find on GitHub. That's really cool for that. Okay. So I think a chronic problem is only a problem that's missing a tool. Intractable team programming problems. Introversion. People who say, well, I'm an introvert, so that means that I don't need to communicate with other human beings. Not really true. Not really true about introverts either. You can't just use that as an excuse. It's okay to want to be soft-spoken, that's fine, but there are still ways in which you need to connect with other humans. Professional navigating, if you know about this for pair programming. Does anybody have any questions about professional navigating, what that is? Yes. So basically, in one pattern of pair programming, you'd have a driver and a navigator. So one person is at the keyboard, and the other person is telling that person what to do on a higher level. Sort of like if you're driving and someone says, like, okay, get onto the 5 freeway. All right, maybe you know how to get there. Maybe you don't. You're like, what's a 5 freeway? And the other person goes like, all right, go down this street, stop there. All right, stay on the left side of the street. Or is it the right? Is it the right side of the street that we drive here? Yeah, right. Okay, stay on the right side of the street.
I didn't know that was a real question.
That's a real question. I don't know my right from my left. Sorry. I drove Doug down here, by the way. So.
That's why it's terrifying.
So any of these professional navigating or professional driving means that one person is always telling the other person what to do, or someone is always grabbing for the keyboard. That doesn't make for a good, a productive pair programming session. Another one is getting into arguments and spinning in circles. No, I want this to be a for loop. No, it needs to be a case statement. No, case statements are ugly, I hate them. Too bad, I don't like for loops. You know, you're not going to get anywhere doing that. So, and these are things that happen, like in a subtle way. I mean, you usually don't get an overt argument like that, but it's happening. You know it's happening. You've seen those. Having a bad pair is just the other one. Anyway, so Impro-Style Improv tools can help with this. There's a couple of concepts that we'd like to demonstrate, because it's easier to demonstrate this than to really explain it. And, you know, who knows where this is going to go after that. It's kind of, I mean, we kind of have some slides, but it's an improv thing. Status is one concept. There's another one called second circle, which is about listening. Offering less. Staying positive is another really huge thing. Allowing yourself to be changed is another huge one as well. And so these are things that work in improv scenes, but they will also work very well for pair or collaborative programming. But before we get into that, word on team safety and failure management. I have tried this with clients that I have had. Some of them have had very, very bad negative reactions to it. And the reason is because you need to have the right kind of team to start doing this. So you really can't have a fear-driven team in order for this to work. There isn't enough trust to be able to do this kind of thing. Fear-driven teamwork has low trust. Failure is punished. Ideas are pursued based off of how unlikely they are to fail. Individual courage is a challenge to the leadership. Vulnerability is exploited. So if you say, hey, I don't know, then, well, what are you doing here? Why are we even paying you? What do you mean you don't know? Fear of consequences is another part of that as well. Now, a values-driven team is a little different. There's high trust. Failure is celebrated. And this happens a lot in improv. You can't have an improv scene where you don't fail. You kind of throw yourself to the ground and miss, basically.
Okay.
Ideas are pursued based off of how well they match the team's values. Individual courage is promoted by the leadership. Vulnerability is nurtured. So if someone says, I don't know something, that's fine. And then the question comes, well, what can we do to help that? Not, hey, why are you even here? There's excitement for consequences as well. Hey, let's try it and see what happens. So that's one thing that you need to have before you can even start with this stuff. However, you can keep this in mind in your own head if you're working with a pair and it's not going exactly the way you want. You can use these things to debug it. So let's talk about status. What do you guys think of when you think of status?
Update sounds good.
Update?
Like an update on what you're doing.
Sure. Okay.
Relative status within a team, like senior leadership.
Interesting. I like that one. Any other thoughts? Yeah, this kind of status is not the kind of status that you get in like object-oriented programming where you have an object that has a certain status inside of it, a certain state, right? This is status as in like my relationship to Doug, to this computer, to my shoes. Status is something that you have as a relationship to every single object or person in your life since the time that you were born to the time that you die. You are never without status to everything around you. For example, my shoes. If I go home, I take off my shoes, like whatever, it's a shoe. My shoe has low status to me in comparison to me. I have high status to the shoe. My computer, I'm never going to do that to my computer. And the reason is because my computer has a much higher status to me. So I treat it well. High status computer. Same thing goes with teams. Anyone in your team can have high or low status. So someone who's new to the team might have low status to someone who's high in the team, who is more senior. You can also have that reversed in weird, creepy ways. Like you can have a low status leader who's always like, hi guys, I'm really sorry, but you know, I have to cut the budget. Oh, you don't want that? Okay, I'll go and fix that. So, you know, you can have that too. That exists. We're gonna play with this. Also, by the way, status shifts. So like an unhealthy status relationship is gonna be one that's permanently locked, where there's one person who's always high and one person who's always low. High trust, healthy relationships do this. There's no such thing as an equal status. You never have equal status with anything around you. You always have some amount of higher or lower status to everything around you. But healthy is where it goes back and forth like this.
Is there a word for that? Like changing status or constant status or real-time status?
Yeah, I don't know, it's
Oscillate.
We just use changing status usually, mostly, when it comes, on the improv side of it, when it comes to scene work, it's usually just, the scene gets boring if there's not change of status. And the more change of status there is, the more realistic the scene is.
Yeah.
Because most relationships in the real world are like changing all the time, the status is changing all the time. And it, like you said, it's healthier.
Yeah.
So we don't have like a designated term, but generally what we use is just changing status, change of status.
I feel like it's such a big concept that people don't really pay much attention to that. I'm surprised no one's actually coined a term for something like this.
yeah, I suppose it would be like a high frequency or high trust relationship.
Sure.
You might have that with a sibling, perhaps. Not all sibling relationships are like that, of course.
Yeah.
Any relationship can be that way, and any relationship cannot be that way.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's try and give an example of this. Let's do a game where we start off in one status relationship, and then through the scene we'll switch to the other one. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a relationship between two people that they might have?
Lovers.
Lovers. Okay, cool. Let's do that. Then, by the way, at Impro we take that, we will do it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not going to just be funny bits, but just to set your expectations. Who's going to be the high status? Who's going to be the low status person between us? Who's lower status between us? Someone pick.
You.
Me? Okay, cool.
Robert,
Fred.
I see.
You see?
You just walk in here whenever you want now?
Well, I mean,
I was expecting you half an hour ago.
You were?
Yeah, I made you a dinner.
Really?
I made you chicken. It's apricot chicken, your favorite.
My favorite. You made me apricot chicken?
Yep, it's cold now. You're a half hour late.
You know, Fred,
What?
I don't like the fact that I have to ask permission to come into my own apartment that I pay the rent on.
What?
Yeah. You know what? And on top of that, I appreciate the apricot chicken, but you know, I'm allergic to apricots. How would you even do that to me?
What? I took a kill you?
You could have. I mean, you didn't this time.
You're looking at me.
Fred,
Robert.
things are going to change now.
Okay.
I made a mess in the bathroom earlier.
I'll go clean it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the end of that.
That's an example of status switching. Did you guys kind of did you clock where that started to change? That's just to give you an idea that this is a thing that exists. You can use this when you think about how you relate to your teammates.
And like you said, it goes back and forth too.
It should. It
Yeah.
ought to.
Like that just went one way.
Yeah.
As an example of just showing the shift. If we were doing an hour, if we were doing an hour play, that status shift would be what we kind of play with throughout the entire show.
Either it's shifting all the time, or over the course of the entire play, that status might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I mean, I love the concept because, I mean, you don't think about it. In a lot of shops, it's very fixed,
Yes.
right? I mean, you don't see that high frequency adjustment over. A lot of it is title based as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think it's great. I love the thought, but most folks don't get to that level of a trusted team environment. So
Yeah. If you want to read more about, there's a book called Impro by Keith Johnstone. And he has a chapter on status. And he talks about all the different ways in which status works.
yeah.
And there are improv games that you can play if you've got a couple of people you can trust to play around with the idea of status.
What was the name of the book again?
Impro, I-M-P-R-O. And actually, you know, if you're coming into a job interview or you're a client or you're serving somebody, especially as a professional, the best thing to do is to allow your client to be just a little bit higher than you are, but not much. This gives you enough authority to say what you need to say, but also to not threaten your client to take over. So consider that, especially when you're starting to talk to somebody. Yeah?
So, derail your presentation.
No, please.
Just oscillating status. Is this something that, if you've got team members, that they have to be aware of to make oscillate, or as a Scrum Master or leader, you can somehow get them to that without them even knowing what's going on?
I haven't successfully tried it where it's overt. But then again, the team that I was working with at the time was not ready for it. And also didn't really read the room all that well. Which is part of the reason why I study improv, so that I can learn that better. But the first thing to know is just to clock it yourself, to understand it yourself. And then if you want to bring it up, you certainly can. And you can actually talk about these things. But I mean, this is usually the elephant in the room. It's usually the thing that nobody really wants to talk about because it's actually the root cause of a lot of issues. And when you start touching that root cause, it usually causes a lot of things because the status relationship that you have is there for a reason. It's serving something. So you need to know what it is that it's serving to stay that way before you can start fussing with it.
Yeah, sorry, just going back, I think it's a very, very fascinating concept. You know, you see management organizations do this thing where they reverse the org chart and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I'm the president, but I'm also at the bottom of the org chart. It's not real, I guess, in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But something like this is a very interesting concept, I think, for management to kind of get a hold of, because a lot of times managers go, oh, I empower the team, but at the end of the day, they don't really empower the team.
That's
they
true.
Just say they empower the team.
And there's also a thing that you mentioned as well that's true about status. The computer. Anyway, so with status,
That also kind of goes along with some of the later stuff too, with change.
oh yeah, you're right. But one thing to note about status is that it's always given. It's never, you can kind of try to take it, but someone has to give it to you. If I come in and demand a whole bunch of stuff from your team, just because I'm taking status, doesn't mean that anybody is going to give me any of it. So that's another thing to realize. You look like a clown if you come in and you take status and no one has given it to you.
It makes you lower status.
Yeah.
One of the things I was noticing, you were mentioning also that an unhealthy relationship essentially will be static.
Yeah.
But I mean, in that dynamic, that was, I would say, not a particularly healthy dynamic, but even though the status changed, it seemed like constant fighting for status would also be a particularly unhealthy state.
Yeah. Actually, that's going to get into some of the things that come later. Status is one concept, and this can turn evil really quickly. Second circle is another item that I want to talk about as well. So there's another book by Patsy Rodenberg who did who is a coach for the Royal Academy of Art. And what she was what she was working on is an idea of different circles of energy. It sounds very, new agey, but Doug can demonstrate this a little bit physically. So the idea is that second circle is going to be a place where you can both listen and talk. But first circle and third circle are going to be more likely places that you might be day to day. You need those. They're useful, but they're not probably where you want to be if you want to be part of a collaborative open team. First, let's demonstrate first circle. You want to get into a first circle posture? Cool. So what are you guys noticing about his posture right now?
Doesn't want to be a part of anything.
Right? Doesn't want to be a part of anything. Good. You're already clocking that. Physically, what is he doing?
Defensive.
He's crossing his arms. Right. His head is lowered. His knees are kind of together. His feet are almost, his toes are almost touching. And this is a position in which Doug can listen, but it's not a position where he's very easily able to offer something. So this is a great position if you want to be on a subway where you are not noticed. Very useful.
That's actually a good point. Each of the circles has a purpose in life, but second circle is
it's the creative. It's a
I just wanted to
creative
iterate. First circle and third circle are not bad things.
Yeah. So yeah.
But second circle is the ideal.
So I can try and communicate with Doug now. Like, hi Doug, how are you doing? How are you liking the team so far? Okay. That's right. You know that. The first circle is something that happens all the time, especially if you're really nervous in your team. It's totally natural to just fall into that. Oh, you gotta protect myself. I don't know what's going on. Just gonna listen really carefully and try and think really hard about what to do next. It's also a great place for that, but it's not very good for actually contributing to the team. Third circle is exactly the opposite. So that's the third circle posture. You can see he takes up a lot of room, he takes up some of my room, he stands in front of me. So, how are you doing, Doug?
I'm great.
Oh, really?
I like this room.
Did you like the breakfast you had today?
Huh? I like, yeah, sure.
Okay, so there's a couple of things to note about this. So, what are you observing from Doug's behavior in third circle?
Not looking at you.
No.
Unfocused.
Unfocused. Right. So a couple of key things about third circle being the opposite from this is that it's puffed out. It's, I'm going to attack you. Also based off of fear. Great if someone is coming at you, you need to go like, whoa dude, stop. You know, great energy for that. Not really so great for trusting teamwork. Also notice that he wasn't really listening to me. So third circle, I've got lots of ideas and I don't have room for anyone else's right now. I'm just going to talk about what I'm going to talk about, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So that's third circle. Second circle is going to be kind of halfway in between those. Notice one similarity between first and third. Both of them are about yourself. So it's about, first circle is about, I need to listen and sort of defend myself. Third circle is, I've got an idea. So second circle is a little different. It's sort of the balancing point between those two. So it's not this and it's not this, it's kind of halfway in between. One thing about second circle is that it's all about the other person. Like immediately there's a connection here. It's a different kind of energy. I don't know what yet. There's something going on. You okay? I had a lot of coffee. A lot of coffee.
Yeah, you seem a little jittery.
Yes, I am. I'm very jittery. But you seem really calm, and I'm really glad that you're here to anchor me for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Pirates.
Yeah. Pirates are cool. I like pirates.
No, you said anchor.
Anchor. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was meaning it in sort of a.
No, I know. Whenever someone's an anchor, I just immediately.
Yeah. So second circle allows for a little bit more collaboration. We're listening to each other, we're engaging each other with each other. It's no longer about me, my ideas, or me and my fear of not measuring up. It's now about what does everyone else need? Am I checking in with everybody? So if I'm second circle with this room, I should be kind of have a soft focus of everybody here, kind of give that attention. It would be inappropriate for me to just give second circle to only one person in this room. That's creepy, right?
That's very creepy.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop because that's creepy. Sorry about that. But you see what there are times where it's appropriate and times where it's not, and there are ways in which you can use it in a team. And there are ways in which you can check in with yourself and go like, oh, I'm really first circle right now. I need to open up a little bit. Or I've been talking a whole lot. I need to just calm down a second and just let some other people talk. So that's kind of second circle idea. Offer less. When you're offering, when you're working in a team, if you've got a whole lot of ideas, that's great. But in pair programming, I'm not sure if this has ever happened to you, but someone says like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up the database, and then we're going to go into the ORM, and from there we're going to get onto the membership class, and from that we're going to work on these bit fields. The bit fields, by the way, are using a binary system, and that binary system works using these different pointers that are going to that. And so you understand right now, are you ready to just program? Ready to just jump in? No, because too much has been said. There's too much going on.
Yeah, I heard only bits and pieces of what you just said.
Right. Same sort of thing. Too much. Don't give that much. Give just enough of an idea to spark the idea from the other person. So let's try a scene where we do this, where we just start with so, and we try to have as few words as possible. Great. What sort of suggestion do you want to get from me?
Can we get a location?
Some sort of location, which two people might be. Disney. All right, cool. So. Little kid puked.
It's the happiest place on earth.
Little kid puked.
Oh, at least he's enjoying himself.
I'm not enjoying myself.
What?
I'm not enjoying myself.
It's the happiest place on earth.
It's the happiest place on earth. Doesn't change me.
How can I make you happy?
I need a hug. That's it.
Yeah.
So, offer less. If I started the scene with like, oh my gosh, it's Disney World, and there's Magic Mountain, and there's this other thing, and this kid is puking, and oh my goodness, this parrot just split in two for some reason. Too much. You're like, you can't respond to all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, better to offer less. So, if you're working with a partner, just give the other person just enough to spark the next idea. That's it. Another one is to stay positive. And this is huge for us because we'll do a 30-minute scene or an hour-long, hour and a half sometimes. When we do that, if we start off with a conflict right away, there's nowhere to go. Also, like the audience hasn't learned to care yet. So that's how it works in improv. Staying positive, how might that work in team programming? No, it isn't. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
What I've often seen in not so healthy mobs is
Yeah.
a tendency to, once the next navigator comes in, to kind of like undo the previous work rather than yes-handing it.
Yes!
It's
horrible.
I'm glad
Right.
you just said yes and, which is a huge improv principle.
Yeah, it is. I'm not mentioning it because it's so cliche to mention yes and,
But I just love that it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is about yes-anding also, but it's yes-anding in a particular way. That is to focus on the positive. Don't try to undo what someone else is doing. Don't say, no, that's a bad idea. We got to do this instead. And the other person goes, nah, it's a bad idea to do this. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not producing anything. You're just having an argument on the company's dime. And that's not a healthy way to go about doing things. You're not going to produce anything. It's much better to instead stay positive. I don't know how exactly we would describe that in a scene. Maybe we skip it. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, not the first thing we did.
Yes, good point. I was just remembering that first scene. I had forgotten all about that. I don't know.
We don't need to.
We don't need to. Yeah, we don't. But, you know, Doug, I gotta say that I'm really glad you're up here with me.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's, I mean, I really couldn't do it without you. I mean, I'd be talking to myself. That'd be really weird. Not only that, but, you know, you're actually one of the best improvisers I know.
Oh my god.
Really. I mean, seriously, you've got to be at least one of the best technical improvisers in the world simply because there's so few of them.
I don't know, I think there's 4. And they're all at improv.
Yeah, you're at least one of the top 4 in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, staying positive. Yes?
How do you, I mean, just in that example there, what if someone is actually doing something that you want to be done differently? How would you approach that?
That's actually a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you take it.
The first thing that I would do is point out what I like about it already. If you need to, it's a good idea to try and figure out why it is that they've done the thing that they've done. I'm sure to them they think it's a great idea.
Is this the criticism sandwich, right? You heard that saying?
I've heard of that, but I don't really think that that's very good. Especially it can be used wrongly. Like, sort of like, Doug, I like your hair. Your face is ugly, but your shoes are nice.
Can we go back to the positive?
Yeah.
What about like a springboard, like you run on it and you jump and you go somewhere, and like launching you somewhere, even though it's positive, it's not necessarily going to be a sandwich.
Right, yeah, and keep in mind that the idea of the criticism sandwich is, how can I tell someone something negative without it seeming like it's negative? But you've already got the wrong idea just by asking yourself that question of, how do I tell someone something negative? Instead, try and figure out what it is. Definitely, in Agile, we call it turning out the good, right? Instead of always focusing on what's going wrong, you try and figure out what's going really well. How can we do that even more? So that is an example of staying positive.
Well, one thing I've heard in the past, which I thought is that, you know, which is against convention that I'm used to, is when you have 2 or 3 coders having a different opinion on something, you first try the opinion of the guy with the least experience, which is always weird to me. I'm listening to the guy with the most experience who knows what he's doing. But in a mobbing world, you listen to the guy who has the least experience because they bring in a fresh perspective that the experienced person hasn't thought about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I thought that was really, I think it was good, it made sense. But there are times when you know they're going down a bad path, and you know it's going to lead to something bad, and it's going to waste a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
How do you course correct?
Well,
I'm not saying there's an answer here, but I'm just, it's a common problem.
in improv, that does happen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So how do you, like, you know the scene is going off the rails already because all of a sudden we're talking about pterodactyls.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be Jane Austen. And so what do? Do you try to stop it, or what do you do?
You redirect it is what it really happens. And like for improv, you redirect it. You still accept that offer, but then you another thing we talk about is grounding, which is like trying to make stuff realistic. So if we're doing a Jane Austen scene and he starts talking about pterodactyls, I'll accept that there's pterodactyls, but then I'll try to justify it somehow. So it's kind of like, why is he talking about pterodactyls? Which kind of goes back to the whole thing of, if someone's doing something that you not necessarily don't like, try and, like, instead of being like, no, that's a bad idea, ask them how they got to that idea. Because it's another thing after our shows we discuss. Like, someone will have a hit that I never thought of. It may not be a bad thing. I may not have liked it, but I will go up to them and be like, a thing that we say a lot is, what was your hit? Which means, like, what was your idea coming onto the stage? Just to kind of, and it also kind of gets you into the mindset of your partners, so that you can kind of understand how their brain works a little bit more.
Yeah.
So does that kind of help answer your question? I mean, I guess there's not really a defined answer.
No, but when you're on the stage, you can't undo that. It's happened. So you have to work with it. And sometimes it makes for really weird Jane Austens that involve riding pterodactyls for a little while before it finally comes back to a love story about two people falling in love on top of their pterodactyls. And maybe it's not exactly Jane Austen, but it still is a good story.
Yeah, and then the failure is celebrated later. It's like, oh, remember that Jane Austen pterodactyl story? Which goes back to the failure is celebrated that was on the first slide.
I have a teacher who would say, fail with glee. So, yeah. Speaking of which, being changed is another big part of that as well, and that actually gets right into that.
Yeah.
So, if two of you are butting heads, or if a number of people are butting heads, choose to lose. If you do so, it'll allow things to move forward. Even if it's the wrong idea, if you choose to lose and you allow it to go down, then everyone can learn what that is. And that's a lot like what you're talking about with a mob programming scenario where the least experienced person's idea is what's taken. And then it's because the person with the highest status is going to be usually the person who has the most experience, is choosing to let go of that, to go down this road that they know is not going to end up very well, but just so that everyone gets to learn, you go down it with them. You choose to lose. Then everybody learns, and then back you go. Or it turns out that actually their idea is brilliant, and whoever knew that if you combine peanut butter and chocolate and then also some beef stock, it really makes it so much better. Or maybe it doesn't.
Sure. Let's try it.
Okay. Actually, I'm vegetarian, so we're going to have to use vegetarian beef stock. Cool. Okay. So being changed is a big part of that. Doug, do you want to try and like take a big stance on something and then be changed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Suggestion?
Suggestion? What? Can you give Doug an emotional state?
Confusion.
Confusion. Okay. Hey, little buddy.
Oh, God. Yeah?
Son,
What?
you're looking at the trains.
I just, it can't be real. Like they just move too fast. I don't.
Look, I know, buddy, that
No,
they look like they move too fast.
no, I'm gonna get sick.
You're okay? You're positive. Look at the trains. Just don't focus on all of them. Focus on just that one. And then that. Just one. Don't have to focus on all of them.
Okay. I guess they're not as fast as I thought.
Not when you look at just one. But look at me, son. No matter how fast you go, I'm always watching you.
Thanks, Dad.
So, being changed. So yeah, that's sort of a demonstration of those sort of things. But allow yourself to go ahead and be wrong. Let yourself lose. If you do that, then things can move forward. This is another quote. You may have seen this one before. We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. Does anyone know who I'm quoting? Yes, perfect. Improv is just one tool that we can use that comes from outside the world of Agile that we can integrate into Agile to create some new ideas and new tools and new ways of fixing things. Things that have to do with Agile that you might not expect. But there's tons of others. Who knows what else is out there? So basically just go forage for new ways of thinking. You know, use anything that seems outlandish or strange. It's all there. And thanks. So that's our actual talk. Do you want to talk about some more, or do you want to get up and try some improv things? I don't know. Any questions? What time is it?
10:52.
Oh, good grief. Got late. Yeah.
I think it's great. Thanks for doing this. Where are you guys from? Just kind of curious. Are you guys from around here? Or?
LA.
Yeah, LA.
Area? Okay.
I work for a company called 8th Light. We're a software software consultancy. And so we have an apprenticeship program where we everyone who gets hired through us goes through that apprenticeship program for like about 6 months. We're just paid to learn during that time. And then after that we start. Impro Theater is actually in Los Feliz in Los Angeles. It is a tiny, tiny theater that's on the second floor of a strip mall. There's a vape shop in the middle of it. And we put on full-length plays of all kinds of styles and genres for fun. It's also a school, so if you're in the LA area, you can sign up for classes there. They have basics classes that are taught by Lisa Fredrickson, who is amazing.
And also, you can come up to us at any time and ask us more about that.
Yeah, certainly.
We'll be around.